Alright, so a couple of weeks ago, we got one of my favorite films of the year, Longlegs, into theaters. Today, I'm going to share my favorite horror films of the decade. Alright, before we get started, this has actually been a really great year for horror. It was hard for me to find 10 movies that I could just fit into 10, so I ended up making a list of 12 because it was such a great year. Last year, 2022, all that. Such great years for horror. The 2020s has been awesome. So before I share you my 12 favorite horror movies, make sure to go down below and tell me your favorite horror movies from the decade so far. And while down there, subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the bell so you don't miss another video. We are at 198. 2 more subscribers and I will have a special video coming for you guys. And with that said, number 12 is going to be A Quiet Place Part 2. Now, this is a film I recently had to rewatch and I recently talked about because of the new Quiet Place movie, A Quiet Place Day 1 that came out. And for the most part, I thought it was solid. The movie does have issues. It's got pacing issues, in my opinion, because in a movie where you can't have people like flat out talking, there is quite a bit of walking from this place to this place to this place, so much to where there's like a 15-minute span where nothing was happening. But this movie definitely has some of the best stuff that the Quiet Place franchise has ever had. We have that whole island sequence with the creature on the island, which I think is a top 10 Quiet Place, or not even top 10, this is a top 3 Quiet Place movie sequence. I thought it was great. Everything that the creatures are in is phenomenal. Obviously, you can't use sound, and so the whole universe of A Quiet Place is very interesting, and it's able to have the interesting stuff and the scenarios that it's able to do, and this movie heavily leans into that. So there's quite a bit in this movie that I just really enjoy, and despite it kind of dragging in the middle, every scene that the creature's on is pretty scary, and it works really well. And even though the movie's not like a top 10 movie, I still really enjoy this one, and it's one I revisit more than the other 2 in this franchise. Number 11 is going to be M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. So, M. Night Shyamalan is my least favorite director of all time. I do not like his movies, most of them. Most of his movies I don't like. There are some movies that I really do enjoy of his, like this one. This one is only this low on this list because I didn't know if I could consider it a horror movie. I didn't know if it would go into like the thriller category or the horror category. I'm considering it here, not because I think it's scary, because it's not, but because it kind of fits into like the thriller horror category just a little bit. So I'm including it here. I really like this movie. I really did. It has a very interesting premise that sets up for an interesting idea. What would you do if if these people knocked on your door and said, one of you's got to die to prevent the apocalypse? What would you do? And so it's very interesting. It's got great performances. The big standout being obviously Dave Bautista. He is great in this role. He really is showing his acting chops as of lately. And so the movie just has this interesting idea, and it's got some thrilling moments. Nothing I'd say is too scary, but it's got some thrilling moments and just a great idea here. And by the time you get to the third act, when one of them has to decide to die to, you know, save the world, it's very interesting how that works and the kind of emotional pushback that the movie's able to give. Because it's not like a classic M. Night Shyamalan movie. It doesn't have a twist that flips the entire movie on its head for the worst. It's got a not grounded story, but it's got an interesting story. A great performance by Dave Bautista, and just a pretty emotional ending, and I thought this movie was very solid, and I cannot wait to revisit it this coming week for Trap. Number 10, we got Totally Killer. This was a movie that kicked off the October Halloween season last year, and I think it's a very fun slasher. Again, it's a horror movie that's not really scary, but I'm a big slasher guy, and so this movie really works for me. It's got a nice cast here. It's got genuinely funny moments. It's technically Back to the Future, but in a slasher mode. It like Scream mixed with Back to the Future, if Scream and Back to the Future had a baby. So that was really interesting, and it makes up for some very funny moments, what they can do with time. Like some just interesting gags in here where a character's like, I would never talk to, like the mom's like, I would never talk to my mom that way to her daughter. And then when she's hanging around the mom, she talks the same way to her mother. So, I mean, it's got some really clever and funny gags here. There are some interesting kills. It's just a genuinely fun slasher movie. I'm a big slasher fan, and this movie doesn't do anything that's blatantly dumb or boring. It's got a unique premise here, and the kills are fun, and it's got a twist here that doesn't really flip the whole movie on its head, but I thought it was solid, and so this was a solid beginning to the October horror movie season last year, and it's just a very fun slasher movie that I give a huge thumbs up to. Number 9, I'm going with Halloween Kills. Yeah, I get that people have a lot of issues with this movie. I don't necessarily like that it kind of shoves down your throat. Evil dies tonight. Evil dies tonight. I don't like that it's so forceful in the way that that's there, but I genuinely had a blast with this movie. Again, it's not scary, but it's a slasher movie, and this Halloween movie is one where it really leans into the slasher vibe, to where you got Michael Myers just wasting people left and right. It's got some crazy cool kills. I think back to the firefighter scene, think that's very fun as he's just going around taking out these people that are trying to take out Michael Myers, and he's killing them left and right. It is very, very, very fun. And so in a movie that it doesn't have as good of a vibe that Halloween 2018 has, it's not as good as the classic Halloween movie. It's very, very fun and really heavily leans into the slasher vibe of things, so I really enjoy this movie. Number 8, I am going with Immaculate. This is a new nun horror movie that came out this year, and it's a movie that I was looking forward to, but at the same time, I was just a teeny weeny bit nervous to it, because I'm not really the biggest fan of nun horror movies, but when it came out of South by Southwest, I heard Sydney Sweeney, and it's got a crazy ending, and this movie is really going to enhance your experience, whether you like the ending or you hate the ending. For me, I loved the ending. I loved how messed up of an experience this is. I love messed up movies, and obviously watching some nun horror movies, specifically like The First Omen, very familiar. It's got some familiar vibes in there, but the way I think this movie works is it's got some intriguing moments. It's 90 minutes, to where The First Omen has draggy parts, because that's 2 hours. This movie's able to do everything it needed to do in 90 minutes. Which is really, really cool. And then when we get to the ending, it's just really unique. That final shot is haunting, and a great performance by Sydney Sweeney. This is a nun horror movie that I'd recommend over The First Omen. I really enjoyed this movie. Number 7, I'm going with Scream 5 from 2022. The Scream franchise is a franchise that is really, really needing a requel. The Scream franchise is known for making fun of horror movies. Scream 2 is known for making fun of horror sequels, but we kind of get lost along the way in 3 and 4. They kind of don't really have the same weight that Scream 1 or 2 can, because it doesn't have like the stuff that they can make fun of, because it's just another sequel. Now, sequels is able to have all that stuff that the movie can make fun of, parody off of, while also being a genuinely entertaining slasher. Every time they're talking about the requel stuff, I think it's very interesting. The moment we hit the halfway point, when we learn exactly, like, we figure out kind of what the plan is here for the ghost faces, I think that's really cool. Plus, it's got some cool kills. Some really cool kills, actually, where the two ghost faces, they are mainly going after Jenna Ortega, and there's that great cold opening sequence, and then every time they just kill people off, it's entertaining, because that's what this movie's able to do, is be another entertaining slasher that works because it's a Scream movie that works about requels. It makes fun of requels, and I think it's really, really cool there. Plus, I do like the reveals. I like that Jack Quaid is in a Scream movie. I think that the two reveals aren't as strong as they possibly could in other Scream movies. I think that they're probably the third best villains in the franchise, right after Scream 4 and Scream 1. But I still thought they were solid reveals. So overall, as a requel to the Scream franchise, I thought it really, really worked. Coming in 6th place, I am actually going with Godzilla -1. This is interesting for me because this is a creature feature. It's like a monster movie. It's not really a horror movie, but this movie terrified me. It was genuinely terrifying for me because, honestly, with me, when I saw the trailer to this movie was after everybody was talking about it, and I saw the trailer to this movie, and it was haunting. I think the design for Godzilla is terrifying in this movie, and I went to see it in the theater where the sound design was so freaking cool. Every time Godzilla showed up on screen, I was terrified. I was terrified in this movie. I was terrified every time I watched the trailers because the design for Godzilla is so scary. It's not just he's a hero who's coming to stop the other titans. No, it's a movie that Godzilla is a pissed off lizard who is going to kill people and destroy entire cities. And just like, it looks like Godzilla knows exactly what he's doing on his face. And it's awesome. It's awesome. The design for him is awesome. And the budget they had was significantly lower than tons of blockbusters that don't look as good. One of my problems with Deadpool and Wolverine, I love that movie, is that sometimes the CGI doesn't look good. The Godzilla Minus One has a significantly lower budget, and it looks spectacular. I've seen the movie twice, and I was terrified every single time that I see Godzilla because the design is great, the sound design is great, and it's just a great movie. And minus all the scary stuff with the Godzilla, the movie's got a really, really heartfelt story where it's about a guy who was a kamikaze pilot, but he failed. He didn't do the job. So he's like kind of going through this depressing era. He's depressed, and meanwhile Japan is going through all this with Godzilla destroying stuff. And so like the main character has a great character arc throughout the entire movie that I find really, really worked. So Godzilla Minus One, it has a great story. It focuses a lot on the characters, but every time Godzilla's there, it's terrifying. Kicking off our top 5 is Abigail, the new movie about a vampire ballerina that is so much fun. I have a blast with this movie. I've seen it twice now, and the majority of the movie is so much fun to where we have this fantastic cast of characters. We have Melissa Barrera, justice for her after what happened to her in the Scream franchise, but Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, Catherine Newton, who is so good in horror movies, Kevin Durand, who's hilarious in this movie, Angus Cloud, who is, rest in peace, he's pretty good in here. But the big standout is Alicia Wire, who plays Abigail. She's a little girl, and she's so good. She's able to capture everything that this movie needed her to be, and she's so good. So with this cast here, it's a very good cast. They all have fantastic chemistry with one another, and very funny moments. But on top of that, we get vampire ballerina killing people, and it's bloody, it's gory, it's a ton of fun. It's exactly kind of horror movies that I enjoy, where it's not scary, but it is genuinely a absolute blast inside this movie. It is absolutely fun the entire time. It's funny, it's got blood, it's got gore, it's everything that a casual horror fan could want from it, with outstanding performances. I have a ton of fun with this movie. The one problem I have with it is the final 20 minutes don't normally work as well for me. Like when Dan Stevens turns into a vampire and starts killing everybody, I don't find that to be as compelling as it should be. And then like Abigail tries to have a redemption arc to where she's like, no Dad, this person helped me. Why are we rooting for her all of a sudden in the end? I think that's a really bad idea, but the majority of the movie is a ton of fun, and I still enjoy the ending. It's just weaker than the rest of the movie. Number 4, and this is where these next 4 movies are absolutely terrifying. Number 4 is Longlegs, the movie why I'm making this video, and it's terrifying. And I think the main reason it's so scary is because I believe that this can happen. I am a Christian, which means in turn I have to believe in Satan, and so the satanic stuff that this movie does, it hits because it's scary. It's genuinely scary. Because I believe that someone could just come possess a doll to possess the family. I believe something like that can happen. So it's genuinely terrifying. And the way that this movie's shot, to where like we get scenes that are just shot through like a little square camera. I forget what the cameras are called right now, but it's interesting. The color vibe is cool. The sound design is great, but specifically the cinematography to where the characters are always on the forefront. Imagine all this area being empty. And so you're constantly looking around whatever character's on screen to see if something is around you. The movie's vibe just makes it so paranoid. I was so paranoid this entire movie that something would happen. And it's genuinely terrifying. It genuinely works for what it was trying to do. And Longlegs, I think, is great. And don't even get me started on Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage is genuinely terrifying. I was terrified of Nicolas Cage. His costume design, his makeup, and the performance is absolutely terrifying. So yeah, the movie does have pacing issues. Yeah, the movie as a whole had its issues. But as a horror movie, it's genuinely terrifying, and I think one of the scariest of the decade so far. Kicking off our top 3, I'm going with Barbarian. Now this is a movie that I missed in 2022. I didn't include it in my ranking. I watched it after, and it's still stuck in my head. The movie's got jump scares. That's what it is. But the jump scares aren't just, what's that? Oh, okay, there's nothing. Ah, there's something there. No, that's not what this movie is. It's like, you're just going down this dark basement, and my favorite scene is where the camera's just into the dark alley. They're talking to each other, and all of a sudden, boom, something comes out of the dark alley and just attacks them. Just so fast where your mind can't even comprehend what's going on. And it's terrifying. It's genuinely scary because it's kind of like a creature feature, but then again, not really. The whole premise of the movie is about going down inside this basement thing, and there's a creature there, and it's kind of like just a whole chase movie. It shouldn't really, like, it's not like the most scariest movie that you would have ever seen, but it's interesting to me because the way that all the jump scares work, the way that the chases work, the creature design is so scary that it genuinely scares you because you don't want to see the creature. And by the time when you get to the end of the movie, you're just trying to run away from the creature the whole time, and it's just a relentless chasing machine, and it's scary. It's really, really scary, and so you don't want to see the creature. And so yeah, it doesn't mess with your mind. It's not smart horror, but it's genuinely scary, and the creature design stayed in my mind ever since I watched the movie. I really like this one. Kicking off our top 2, Nope. Nope, Jordan Peele's new movie. I absolutely love this movie. I think it's Jordan Peele's best movie, and what works about it is that it's just genuinely creepy. Every time I watch this movie, which is 3 times now, I've noticed something new and new and new. The scariest part is when you can still hear the screams as they're going up in the alien. From like the very beginning, the credits, you just hear the screams while you're inside of the alien, and it's genuinely scary. It is genuinely scary. The alien design is pretty cool. I think it's genuinely really cool. And so the movie just has a way of staying in your mind, because like this alien's here and you've seen what it's able to do, and it's genuinely creepy. And so when I'm watching this movie, I just don't want to see the alien. I just don't want to see it because I know what it'll do. And the way that Jordan Peele's able to be like, hey, this alien's here, and the way it's able to see like a giant floating saucer, not just being like, oh, it's just a giant floating saucer. Able to see like, you don't want to be in the midst of that thing. The way Jordan Peele's able to use it is great. The stuff that the alien does is great. It's genuinely pretty scary, and I'm haunted by the screams. The screams are haunting. The way that it's able to do that and inflict fear in your mind from the very beginning of the movie, and to where it's not just like an alien movie. They're not just gonna probe your brains. It's just an alien movie that's eating people, and it's pretty cool. I think it's Jordan Peele's best movie. It's got great performances by Daniel Kaluuya, Keke Palmer, great performances there. And so I just genuinely really enjoy this movie. I genuinely think it's Jordan Peele's best, and Jordan Peele's one of the best horror directors in Hollywood. I love him. I love this movie. But first place was my favorite movie from last year. It is Talk to Me, the movie made by a bunch of YouTubers. It's a movie made by a bunch of YouTubers, and that's so cool. The beginning of the movie is just such a cold open, so good, to where it just sets a vibe of the entire movie, to where, I'm not gonna spoil it, but sets the vibe the entire time. And the movie's just about a bunch of kids jerking around with demons, and because I believe something like this can happen, it is pretty scary. And so it's just like, yeah, they're messing with demons, it's cool. Until we get to like the third act of the movie, near the third act, to where the movie just becomes depressing, where the hand is taking over this person's mind. You must use the hand, and it basically almost killed this little kid. This little kid is almost killed because of this hand. And so, like, the stuff that it does to the little kid is genuinely scary, and the stuff that it's possessing the mind of our main character is pretty cool. By the end of the movie, you're trying to save the kid by killing the kid, and it's just a very depressing ending. It stayed in my head for the longest time. I love movies like this where it's depressing the whole time. There's nowhere to look but up. It's genuinely scary because of the stuff it's able to do. I love depressing movies. I love scary movies. And this one was genuinely scary and stayed in my head, and that final scene was great. This is probably my favorite horror movie of the decade, but it's pretty close between these last four because these movies are genuinely scary to me, and I really do enjoy those movies. But that was my best horror movies of the decade. What is your best horror movies of the decade? I want to know all that and more. And while you're down there, make sure to subscribe, to the like button, hit the bell so you don't miss another video. Deadpool and Wolverine spoiler review coming very, very soon. Then I will have an X-Men ranking, an X-Men, all the franchises in the X-Men universe ranked. I'll have a lot of stuff coming out lately for Deadpool and Wolverine, plus a lot of other videos. I'm about a week behind in videos. With that said, thank you for clicking on this one and subscribe to the Army. Peace out.